Welcome to It Starts With You, where we cut through the noise and get real about the behaviours that shape our lives, both personally and professionally. I'm Vicky Farrell. Let's jump in because behaviours start with you. So here we are on another episode of It Starts With You. Today I am joined by the wonderful Lisa, and you're coming to us. I think we've just gone past Valentine's Day when this episode is launched, and that becomes 2-year anniversary of this podcast, which is phenomenal. But that does mean that the next one is going to be me riding solo. I've had lots of requests from you about answering questions that I get sent in. So watch out for the next one. It'll be me. But anyway, that's me waffling away like I do. Lisa, would you love to introduce yourself, please, to the viewers and listeners, who you are and what it is you do in this world?
Okay, so as a fellow waffler, my name is Lise Kaye-Bell and I run an organisation which is about mission-based leadership. I work across corporates, across education sector, and look at things like psychological safety in the workplace. So what makes an organisation and their leaders psychologically safe, and what creates that environment for employees to feel like they can speak out.
And it's really important. I mean, we've become kindred spirits over the personal side of not being in a psychologically safe marriage. Well, we're not going to talk about that. We definitely talk about the workplace. But if someone's listening thinking, yeah, there's something at work, because sometimes you can't put your finger on it, can you, when you know it's, but what's the first thing that someone can do if they want to start thinking, I don't feel safe when I want to speak out?
I would say go and find someone who you do trust in your organisation, and it doesn't matter who that person is. If it's HR, that's great. Might not be. It might be another leader. It might not necessarily be your line manager, but go and speak to them and tell them how you're feeling. And speaking out is about different things. You know, I always say we bring our whole selves to work. So there may be things that are going on at home that you want to share with your manager because it's or share with a trusted employee because it's having a psychological effect on your productivity, you know, your ability to be able to concentrate, be able to even turn up for work. So find someone trusted that you can offload that to, because that's a heavy thing to kind of bring to work with you. If it's a work-related issue, then HR is usually your first port of call. But people don't always feel safe about speaking to HR because then they're an unknown quantity for a lot of people unless you work within a HR team. But again, they are there usually to act as that intermediary between you and management. And it might not necessarily be going down the formal routes of raising a grievance, but it might be just, I don't feel safe because of, or something is happening and I need to speak to someone about this. So, you know, it could be something that's bullying in the workplace. And I've run loads of programs over the years in and around these topics. But first step is always find someone you trust that you can kind of offload that to, because that's the first step to release it.
And I think sometimes when you say about HR, if you've never been to HR and you might only have met them when you started in the workplace, or, you know, got a contract from them, only maybe even over email, depending on the size of your organisation. And I think a lot of people think, oh, if I go to HR, it's going to be on my record. You know, like when you go to see the doctor puts everything on your record. And I think people see that with HR, and that's not always the case, is it?
No, and it might be just an informal conversation. If you make HR aware that this is an informal conversation, I don't want this being recorded anywhere, I just need to speak to someone. And some organisations are great, and a lot of them are moving forward into that wellbeing space now. So there are a lot more in-house counsellors, there are mental health first aiders, there are mental health ambassadors. There's all sorts of things, particularly in the bigger organisations, but even some of the smaller organisations out there. I know I've worked with charities and I've worked with some real small orgs that have at least got people that are trained to be able to listen and signpost.
Because we always talk about, I start every training course that I do with the 3 different types of employees: your engaged, your quiet quitters, and your loud quitters. And we can recognise the
engaged and the loud quitters, and it's the quiet quitters that we don't know what's going on for them. And it, like you say, it could be that maybe there's a new person in their team, maybe they've changed line managers. How do you help people recognize that there's stuff going on for them, that maybe there is some bullying going on, but they don't see it? How could I know?
Yeah, so we run a lot of workshops within organisations, and we use the medium of theatre, which is great because it means that we can get a load of business leaders within a forum, and we unpick different scenarios of what to expect. And we do have one story that takes you on the journey of somebody who's new to the organisation. They're finding their feet. They don't quite know who to speak to. They don't quite know the rules and the customs and practices and the way that things work around here. And they're starting to face what they perceive as bullying. So then what we do is we unpick that dialogue with business leaders and say, well, what could you do in supporting capacity if you recognise this? So we also flip it on its head and say to business leaders, look, what are the indication you've got that this person is either not settling into the organisation, or they're really, really struggling to navigate their way around, be able to speak out and be authentically them, and people want to come to, we're at work a long time, a lot of hours in a day, sometimes 7, sometimes 9 hours. I've worked with people who say, I go 9, 12 hours a day. Well, if they don't feel safe in that environment, it's almost been like locks in a cage. So what we do is we equip leaders to be able to have that initial conversation around how are you getting on, how are you settling, what's happening for you, how do we make it so that it feels, so we get the best out of you. And I've worked in organisations over the years where I've just coasted. I've gone in and I've kind of coasted because I haven't felt safe to speak out and be authentically me. Now, I like to have a laugh and I like to have a joke, but I really have to pick my audience and who I say that stuff to. And quite often, if I work in an organisation that's heavily compliant, heavily on governance and data and structure, and there's no heart in there, that feels alien for me, and I really struggle in those environments. So being able to speak out and say, you get the best out of me if you can set me some projects, or I can work in a space where I can talk about people, where I can talk about behaviour, where I can unpick the culture of the organisation. So that's a really long-winded way of saying what can we do. Well, we do loads of stuff.
No, it's not. It helps the audience understand that you've mentioned there about data and analysts and people. So you aren't on the task side of profiling. You're very much on the people side. But we've all got to work in the workplace together. So when you've run that theatre, and I do love the fact that you do it as a theatre workshop, because it also helps people kind of get into character. They're not answering from themselves. It's like, well, get into character. What kind of things do the leaders come back with themselves to say that they're doing to help new employees?
Yeah, well, they'll say, oh, we've got a wellbeing program. Quite often they'll talk about, we've got this program. And that solves everything. So in my facilitation and questioning, it's like, well, does it solve everything, or are you just ticking a box? And I'm very, very clear on that. So in order to move away from just ticking a box and we've got a program, how do you get under the skin of that individual that's struggling? How do you recognise it? At what point do you step in? So I will ask those questions. So it opens up dialogue. And what we tend to find is that business leaders will go, I do that as well. And it kind of generates that peer-to-peer conversation. So it can go in any direction. But they always start with, we've got a wellbeing program, particularly if you've got HR in there. They'll say, we've got a wellbeing program. It's like, yeah. But that's one-dimensional. You're not getting under the behaviour, under the skin of what makes people tick. You're not finding out about them as an individual and how can you get the best out of them. And this comes from work, 25 years of experience of working in corporates and working in HR teams where I have been doing lots of tick box stuff. And it's like, no, in order to get the best out of me, you need to be creating an environment that helps me do It gives me autonomy, gives me the opportunity to be free and be creative, gives me a bit of licensing.
Let's hit pause for a second so I can tell you how I work with leaders and teams to turn behaviour into results. If your team's stuck in the same old patterns, It's not just a skill gap, it's a behaviours gap. My multitude of workshops break those patterns and build stronger, more productive teams. It starts with you, and together we'll make it happen.
So yeah, we have lots of discussion, but what you tend to find is a real meaty discussion comes from the peer-to-peer stuff. And I just want to clarify, we don't get business leaders acting, we use professional actors, so they unpick what they're seeing the professional actors do, and then it feels less scary, because I'm not a fan of role play. I know some organisations like to do role play. I'm not a fan of it, even though I was an actor many years ago. And I know business leaders don't always like that method either. So what we do is create the actors, and they then use that as a discussion point. So it's like watching telly with your family.
It's a bit like a goggle box, isn't it? It's a bit like you say, the theatre part is the fact that you go, because you're creating an environment that isn't a leader saying, well, this has happened in my organisation. It's just like, this is something that's happened. How would you unpick it? But when you came back on the tick box exercises, it just made my mind go. When I used to be a menopause ambassador many years ago, and people go, oh, that's right, we've got a menopause policy. I'm like, okay, what brilliant. Is that just one of those flow charts that if your answer is yes, go here. If your answer is no, go here. If your answer is yes, and your answer is no, so it's not a written policy doesn't solve an issue. It just ticks a box. You've got to make sure that there is depth to everything that you do.
And that's why we use this, because it brings it alive and it helps them to be able to unpick that in a real as possible situation. What's
the biggest aha moment, would you say? Where have you had a theatre that's gone, that's a real problem solved? That is a real time when people have had a light bulb moment going, that's an issue I've got. That's a major issue I've got, and I didn't realise.
What happens quite often is leaders will go, they'll tell you something and it's so specific, that it's happened to them, but they tell it in a hypothetical way. And that's the light bulb for me that, you're experiencing this, and you're experiencing this enough to make the connectivity between what you're seeing on stage and being able to have this as an open discussion without telling us that that's what's happened in the workplace. So that's a really, really key thing. So it makes it really a safe space for leaders to speak out. It's not necessarily a ha-ha moment, but it might be their ha-ha moment where they go, okay. We get it, where people will tell us things and I'm like, that's so specific that has definitely happened to you without saying it. We just go, okay, let's explore that further. If that was to happen, what would we do? Yeah. So the key is in the facilitation of these sessions as well.
And how long is a session?
They're an hour.
Okay.
An hour, and then we might do some follow-up, depending on the business that we go into. They might ask us to go and do some follow-up with some of their leaders that they want to do a deep dive on a particular issue with. But we can also tackle EDI topics as well. So we don't just talk generally about psychological safety in the workplace. They might say, actually, we've got a topic with around, I don't know, LGBT plus conversations, and this, we really need to have something targeted. So can you run a workshop in and around that space? And if I can't run it or my team can't run it, I bring people in that we can work alongside, and that's not necessarily the actors as well. We kind of do a deep dive workshop on that, so that might be
okay. Yeah, because when we talk about, it's not like, say, it's psychological safety. This is all about, it starts with you and behaviours. Is it also, sometimes I feel that leaders end up so caught up in their own world that they don't realise the impact they're having on their team, because they have brought not only their whole self to work, but they've dragged in, like they've been out fishing and they've got a net and they've just brought in all of these other issues with them, and without realising it's all spilling out in the workplace.
Yeah. So we talk about healthy challenge as well. So when we're working not with leaders but with employees, we talk about how would you challenge that in the healthiest of ways. And I've been in scenarios where I've poured my heart into writing a presentation and it's been absolutely ripped apart. And then afterwards I thought, right, if I asked more questions and I looked more assertive and actually, without being stubborn, was kind of, no, well, this is what the brief was. This is what you've asked me to do. And I had that healthy challenge. that would have had a greater result, rather than me feeling wounded and the person who was bullying me felt powerful, and it shouldn't be like that. So we work with employees as well about healthy challenge and influencing without authority and all those type of good things.
Yeah. That sounds like a very yellow personality of like, oh my God, my fear of rejection has been it's heightened. But we know that if we just talk about extroverts and introverts, or outgoing people and reserved people, we know outgoing people like you and me are probably it's far easier for us to find that safe person and talk about it. How do we help the reserved people who bring themselves to work, but they don't want to bring that I say net. I mean, it might be a little tiny rock pool net, or it might be a massive fishing net. How do we help them be able to talk to somebody?
So I sometimes find that, and we offer coaching as well, that we've got coaching programs and that one-to-one conversation with an individual and being able to unpick it on. So they might come and watch one of our theatre shows and they might go, yeah, that's really resonated with me, but I didn't feel comfortable speaking out because they're in the room, or it's just not my personality. Well, what can we do? Well, I always suggest to find a coach. Doesn't need to be one of us. There are loads of coaches out there. Find one that resonates with you, that you can discuss this with, and then come up with some strategies as to how to manage this moving forward. So again, it's about getting individuals to feel comfortable. It's that psychological safety. It's not just about going, wow, yeah, here we've got a topic about psychological safety. It's about what's comfortable for you to enable you to be able to speak out, or to be able to assert yourself in a way that's appropriate and is not going to get you the sack.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That years ago.
Well, I was just thinking that I'm sure we've both been in those situations where we've perhaps blurted out and not thought about it, or acted ourselves. I think, when I was married to a narcissist, I was a completely different person back then, and I didn't bring my whole self to work. I brought a very professional person to work because I felt like I couldn't tell anybody what was going on, because I felt ashamed about why it was happening and that I was letting it happen to me, or I probably didn't even know it was happening really until the very end.
But it filters through so if you're experiencing something like that at home, that filters into your workplace, because every time you're faced with someone who's controlling, who has similar behaviours, it automatically, I call them little landmines. It sets off a trigger. It's almost like a landmine blowing up, and you go, and you overreact, or you react to something that might, in the person who's giving out, the instruction or the communication, in their head it was nothing, but for you it could be something big. So it's how do we, and you're never going to be able to change people's behaviors in those situations. It's about how do you do something personally that says, if I am faced with this, what is my strategy for being able to deal with it? And it might be, I always find asking questions to clarify. Questions are really good at creating that air of looking like you're in control, and actually there's some professional interest there as well. So okay, so why did you say that? How do you perceive that, or whatever the question may be? I'm just thinking of the top of my head. So.
No, and that's it, isn't it? It's I mean, the podcast is called It Starts With You, because we can't change other people's behaviours. It's just the impact they have on us. But it's about recognizing the ripple effects of our own behaviours, because it's not just if you and me were at an event somewhere and perhaps I was not in a nice mood. I mean, obviously that wouldn't be me, but say somebody came up to you and wasn't in a nice mood and was quite, offensive to you, or was triggering stuff with you. That would then make you change your behaviour to the next person, and so on. And that's when we talk about it's the ripple effects that goes beyond the person that you're talking to now. Because also, if you're having issues at work, you're going to take that home with you. It's a bit like if you're having issues at home, you're going to take that to work with you. And how we if we recognise it in colleagues and the colleagues haven't recognised it in themselves, how do we start that conversation? So if you and I work together and I thought, oh, Lisa's not being herself at the moment, I wonder what's going on for her, but I wasn't close to you, how could I get somebody to talk to you?
I mean, I would open up a conversation anyway and just say, how's everything going? Sometimes it depends on the personality. So if you were talking to me personally, because I'm an extrovert, at some point during that conversation, I would probably in my language patterns reveal that all is not well.
Yeah.
And then it would be a simple thing like, well, do you want to talk about it? Or do you want to talk to someone else about it? Or is this something that you're comfortable with dealing with yourself? And just keeping it kind of light and breezy and open rather than going, what's up with you? Which is what quite often happens.
Yeah, no, it is. It is, especially if somebody is very out of character suddenly at work. Oh my God, what's wrong with you? But the thing is we have to remember as it's human. It's that fight, flight, or freeze in us, isn't it? We tend to we're reacting in our conscious brain before our subconscious has gone, hold on a minute, maybe we need to reframe this. It's very much about pausing, isn't it? And we only need to pause for a few seconds before we react to somebody, thinking to ourselves, for me, the first part of it is what's going on for that other person. Let's get a little bit of perspective here, because that's out of character for them. So rather than snapping at them, let me ask them in a nice way of like, is everything okay? And it could be just something simple. Like some people, like very reds in personality terms, would just be like, yes, I'm fine. But, you asked an opposite side of that green is going, is everything okay? In a very soft, reserved voice, in a side conversation. And even if they don't want to talk to you, it might make them realise that somebody's recognised that there's something going on.
Find an aligned piece, an aligned way of speaking to them. So say you share the same work. It might be just a general conversation around work. How's it going? What's going? And just leading you into that gently. So it takes a bit longer, but once people open up about something that you've got in common, they are more likely to open up about other things. So I personally would go down the route of, how we get on with work, what's going on for you in your world, that sort of stuff. And then, if someone's very red and they're like very closed down, and I've had this recently where, and I'm a bit careful what I say here. So I've contacted someone and asked how they were because I was a little bit concerned. And that person turned around and said, yeah, I'm absolutely fine. Everything's great. I'm just marketing. I was like, okay, that's great. But then I know a couple of people who know this person and just said, look, it might be worth checking in with them. You know them better than I do. Just check in, because it's a nice thing to do. When was the last time you spoke to and the still haven't spoke to them for 6 months? I was like, it might be worth just having a little check in with them. So I will do that without causing any alarms.
Yeah. And we know different personalities. I know I'm very yellow, very outgoing, very people focused. When I'm under pressure, I become very red, and people notice it. I notice myself. I don't like being around me. I'm more Miranda Priestley than anything else, and it's not fun. But I recognise it. But that's because of what I do. So I wrote a couple of bits down there about you saying ask the questions, but finding the commonality with the person. And if you don't have commonality, find somebody that does, to check in on them. That's really powerful. Yeah. Without it sounding like, oh, can you just put a call into Joe Blogs because they're not very good in the workplace today? It's not that, is it? It's not even saying that. It's just,
when was the last time you heard from them? If somebody says 6 months, it's like, well, it might be worth just having a check-in just as a friend, I know that person values your opinion.
Yeah. Because actually that's really nice, isn't it? When you just suddenly get a WhatsApp or a text from somebody, go, oh, haven't spoken for ages, just want to see how everything is in your world. And you go, oh. And depending on your relationship, you might just go, yeah, everything's fine. But actually, if it's someone that you thought, you know what, I just need to offload this, you might actually turn around and go, do you know what? It's all a bit pants at the moment. Being careful because I wanted to swear then, and I'm thinking this is my podcast. But you get some people. You go, no, do you know what? It's absolutely pants, and I'm really struggling with this. And suddenly you offload to somebody that you found safe space with.
And I always think I'd like to be the person that I didn't get when I was going through a lot of bad things at home, and at work, my career just exploded. It just fell apart, and I had to spend years putting it back together because of something that was happening at home. And not once did anybody say to me, I'm worried about you. You've really changed. Your work quality is not great. And I'm still left with some landmines that will come off every now and again. And I have to just give myself a check-in. One of the things I have started doing is I will take out half an hour every single day, usually around lunchtime, to meditate. And I do a quick YouTube meditation and I just clear my mind. And then I'm back for the afternoon and I'm ready to go. One, because I need to do that, and I'm working on a piece of work at the moment. It's really intense and it's draining me a bit, so I need to do it for that. But the other reason I do it is just to give me some time out. Gives me some time out, gives me some time for me, and it helps me reset. Just ready for the afternoon. I'm not great in the afternoons, so I get up at 5 a.m, sometimes 4. Already this morning I've just ticked off a million things before we've even sat down and had this podcast, and I feel great. But I know by 2 o'clock I'm going to be flagging, and we've got a show this evening to do, so I need the energy for this evening. So I'll probably will go and meditate after this session.
I was going to say either meditate or give yourself permission to have a little nap. Because I've done that. I get to a certain stage. But anyway, that's a whole other podcast about energy levels, isn't it? Lisa, it's been wonderful talking to you. Obviously, listeners, viewers, all of Lisa's social media will all be in the show notes. Where's the place that you hang out most, Lisa?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Okay. And if you could leave our viewers or listeners just with one piece of advice, what would that be?
The thing is about work, just be true to yourself. If you spot anything in someone else that doesn't feel right, feels off, then have that conversation that says, are you okay? Simple thing like, are you okay? How's things going for you? That sort of thing. So just, okay.
Start the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, Lisa, and I look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you for listening and watching, viewers and listeners, and here's to the next episode.
Well, that's today's dose of truth. Now go make it happen, because behaviour drives behaviour, and behaviour